Hey, this is Judah Mantell for SceneForge Studio, and in this video I'm going to go over the process of exporting content from Unreal Engine into SceneForge for use over there. This is a pretty easy process, so just bear with me as I go through the steps. So I have this SceneForge project open. We have some terrain with a little shore here and a boat. And at the same time, I also have an Unreal Engine project open over here as well. This is a very basic starter assets, starter map with just free things downloaded from the content browser. But of course, this will work with a more complex project with assets from either yourself or from the marketplace. It should all work the same. So I have this example scene here, and let's say in this example I want to export this little center hut here with the chairs and the roof and the railings and all that stuff. So the first thing we have to do is make sure we have imported this Gltf exporter plugin. This is free from the Unreal Engine marketplace. It's maintained by Epic Games, and it works in version 4.25 all the way to 5.0, which of course is the current version. So this will absolutely work in Unreal Engine 5, which is great as well. So you can click Install to Engine, and once that's done, all you have to do is in your Unreal project, go to Edit, Plugins, and search for Gltf. You might see this one already, and you might also see the importer, but what we want is the exporter. So all you have to do is just click the checkbox here to enable it. At that point, you will have to restart Unreal, but that should take like 30 seconds. And then once you're back in your project, it's a matter of just getting the content out. So there's two ways to do that. The first is to select the model you want, right-click it in the content browser at the bottom. Under Common, you can go to Asset Actions, and then Export, and that'll allow you to export the file. But obviously we don't want to do this object by object because that'll get very tedious. So what we can do here is just select the object we want from the world outliner, which in this case is actually conveniently just this entire folder of static meshes. So we can right click, select immediate children. So now we have everything selected, which is great. Of course, if you wanted to spend more time and manually go through and select the objects that you want to export, you can do that as well. So once these are selected, they'll operate independently, so you can move them around, which is very useful. And once you have that, all you have to do is go to File, and under Actors, do Export Selected, and you can select a file to export to. So I'm going to put this in my 3D Models folder. Of course, you can name the file, and then you have to save as type. Now, Unreal Engine by default comes with exporters for FBX, OBJ, STL, and then an Unreal Engine format. And SceneForge will accept FBX and OBJ, but it's a little more finicky and specific, and therefore for compatibility's sake, it's best to stick with either GLTF or GLB. Those are the two formats that come with the plugin that we just installed. Now in the video about exporting content from SceneForge, I did talk about the difference, but I'll briefly touch on it now. GLB is a binary version of GLTF that stores everything, textures, materials, and all the mesh data into a single standalone file. This is very convenient, but sometimes the file sizes are a bit higher. For now, I'm going to use this file. So I'm going to click Save. And before it actually does the process, it opens up this menu here. Most of the settings can be left as is with no problem, but there are a couple things to note. The first is the export uniform scale. This should be left by default at 0.01, and that is just the right measurement for converting the Unreal Engine centimeters to meters, which is what's used in SceneForge as well as the GLTF file format. So the rest of it you can certainly experiment with to get different results, but most of it works out of the box. Texture you can all leave as is, or you can choose to leave out textures if you don't want to. And next there's the scene category. Of course you can choose to export hidden or not, that's your choice. But then there's export lights, cameras, and HDRI backdrops. SceneForge and most other 3D programs will not read that data from a GLTF. It really depends how it's set up. But SceneForge specifically will not read those simply because cameras and lights work differently between Unreal Engine and SceneForge. So this is really just for getting the scene data, or your 3D models and materials, into SceneForge. So to save on file sizes, to not get any unnecessary data, you can just leave these blank. And once that's done, you can click Export. It might take a second. It has to encode all of the materials. And then, in our project, we have our GLB file. This is a single standalone file, and if you double-click it to open up in the Windows file browser, you'll see that it renders properly with all of the materials and textures. Now before I actually import this into SceneForge, I want to quickly touch on the Gltf variant. So to do that, you can just do the same thing, File, Export Selected, and this time we're going to do Gltf. And rather than a single standalone file, it will export everything as individual maps. So I'm just going to click Export, and once that's done, in here you can see the individual textures for the normal map and albedo, base color, and things like that, as well as the Gltf and bin file that kind of all come together to make a functioning model. So once that's done, you can see here we have all of our textures, and because all the textures are in the same folder, if you open up the Gltf, Windows file browser as well as SceneForge will know where to look, so you can see that here. So now once that's all done, we can go back into SceneForge. We can go to Import, Model. Now we can select either one. You'll see the textures are ignored because it knows where to look for them. So I'm going to select the Gltf, even though they're both the same. Click Import File. And once that's done, it will show up in the project library. So you can click and drag that over here. Now because of the way the file structure works, sometimes the pivot point is a little off. So you can see it's all the way over here. But that really depends on how you have the model set up in Unreal Engine, and that can easily be resolved by adjusting the settings and moving the objects around. Additionally, in the future, there'll be better support for adjusting the pivot point within SceneForge, so you won't really have to deal with this in the future. But for now, it works really well. And you can see we have our object here inside SceneForge with all of the proper materials, textures, and maps, as you can see. And it looks really good, blends in with the scene, as you'd expect. So I'm going to turn down the lights entirely, just so we can get some very specific lighting on the object. And you can see here with our volumetric point light, it all looks pretty great. You can see if we go to select on the object and do edit materials, we have the list of all the materials, and you can go through and adjust different properties, such as the smoothness, as you can see the chairs being adjusted, or even recolor it using the tint. Or if you want, of course, replacing the textures entirely. Something cool with this example scene that I'll just show off is that because everything is highly reflective, so let's see the chairs over here, if you enable ray trace reflections, you get this really nice, realistic and accurate reflective surfaces everywhere on the model, which is really cool. And you see it properly reacts to lights and everything in the scene, which is really great. And so that is basically the gist of it. Again, this is a basic example, but it will work with more complicated scenes in Unreal Engine as well with no trouble. If you do have any specific questions or concerns, you can email support@sceneforge.app and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And so with that, thank you so much for watching. This has been exporting content from Unreal Engine into SceneForge. I will see you in the next video.